So cool.
Thanks a lot for joining today. I would love to talk to you about how we can go from vibe coding to AI-assisted spec-driven development, and why we would need to do that if you're basically in an enterprise, or if you have more than one person delivering your software. What I would like, you cannot see nothing, no? I would have a say, no. Okay.
You can turn around your mobile as your computer, and they can watch that.
Yes, but you will not see much. I mean, unfortunately, I do not get like 20-inch laptops. So basically, I would like to understand shortly what vibe coding means, where it can shine, where not, what spec-driven development is. We try to see how that works. As I said, Anthropic updated the model tonight. So this morning it was a new model. So new model, new world. So we will see how well that works. And I also give you a short overview over the tooling landscape as per February 2026. I guess you will get the slides at some point. I added a list of software, so that will be in the slides, so you can have the link list for yourself.
It's also recorded.
Correct. I will not maybe show not the link list, but okay. Then maybe about me, for people that do not know me, my name is Moser. I do work for Gradion as a principal consultant. I do that a long time already. I think the first time I deployed a program was on 5 1/4-inch floppy disks. It's a long time ago, so I programmed since over nearly 40 years. I do some stuff when I'm not working. Basically, I'm a member of the DevOps Days. I'm also I'm a track curator for Code Talks in Hamburg. If you know the conference, it's quite big since this year. And if I'm not doing tech stuff, I'm playing DJ or play DJ sets all around the world. But let's see. It's not so much spare time in those days, as it's really cool. I'm allowed to work on a new airport here in Hanoi, and it's a really cool project. And if you want to know more, we can talk after the talk. So let's talk about vibe coding. So basically, what is vibe coding? So in traditional software engineering or coding, what we do is we learn a programming language and we try to solve a problem someone tells us in natural language in our programming language. With vibe coding, we try that with the help of an AI. So what we're trying to do is we describe the functionality instead of implementing it. We do not craft and say, hey, look, this line needs to be this, and it needs to be this approach, and it needs to be that. We basically just steer the AI and say, do this, do this, do this. So basically how you work with junior developers if you're not a nice person, I was told. And so your focus shifts from basically the low-level implementation details to the functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and the behavior that you want to have. The cool part is we try to convince business people to do that many, many, many years as software engineers, and we try to convince all the software engineers to do it as well. We have stuff like test-driven development, behavior-driven development, which we for years try to establish, and people say, oh no, it's too complicated, we don't want to think about how it should behave, we just want to code. And this time, with vibe coding, we try to mitigate this and try to just talk to the LLM. So how do we do that? We use natural language to do that. Instead of coding, we use our natural language. And this is good, but also can be bad, because in a programming language, it's very, one way of doing stuff is a very clear, micromanaged, so to say, order for the machine. In natural language, you have things like ambiguity, so two things could mean not the same. And also, what we learn is with natural language, you have a lot of things in your head, which is missing for the AI. The AI doesn't know what is in your head, and for you it's all clear, but for the AI it's not. And I think everyone that used ChatGPT, Claude, or whatever AI tool you use had that already. So what we also then do is we just focus on the goals, on the UX. We say, look, we do not want to know too much how in detail the code works, but we want that it works and that it looks as we have it in our mind. That leads that we are often accepted with minimal reading. We don't go into depth, and that's a big problem, which you will see later. And I still say this is not a good thing, but we have to know it lowers the entry for non-experts to doing stuff. It's cool if you want to talk with your dev team about an idea you had, about something you work on. But on the other hand, make sure that this is just a prototype and not necessarily the working project. And that's the difference we often see when we do that in bigger enterprises. The people, yeah, it works already. Look, I have everything working. I say, yes, it works with like 100 records. But let's say your bank or whatever institute you have has 10 million records. That's a complete other game. So if we compare this to traditional coding, which is a bit old school, we have structure, logic, and scalability. In vibe coding, we have the flow, we have the speed, and we have the creativity, so the people can do things. And often I hear, yeah, you know, your mindset is just old school, you're too enterprise, too boring. And so what is then wrong with vibe coding if it's creative and cool and everyone can do new things? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with vibe coding if, and that's a big if. Well, in the first place, if your dev team looks like this, nothing is wrong with vibe coding. If you're one person with a cool idea that wants to do something and wants to provide a product or have a tool, nothing is wrong. The problem arises that mostly in your company, this is how your dev team looks. It's more than one person. It's a team or many teams of different people. So these people need to collaborate. And if your AI is used to your style of talking, to your style of working, and has no guardrails, it solves the problem in your style. When the next person gives it a call, it is a completely different code base because it's, oh yeah, I refactor everything. And that is the next part. If you're not bothered, if your pull requests look like this. And maybe that's a very extreme example, but that happens a lot if you do not give it enough context. It changes a lot of code, it deletes. And the problem is, at some point, maybe it makes even sense. That's not said that this does not make sense. But what I say is that no one in the world with a human brain reviews that to an extent that they find if something goes wrong or not. On the other hand, often the people with low expertise, they say, hey, it's a cool thing. This one is super cool and it works. What is the problem? And I was told by people, because last time when I gave this call, they say, hey, but there is nothing wrong with it. Just to say the number there should be sent to your phone and not displayed. Just that. Sorry, there were last time complaints when I gave it over. There's nothing wrong with this. And I was okay, maybe this is the problem. But that can happen. And I mean, it looks nice. And if you're not looking too deep, maybe you overlook that very easily. And that's an easy, I mean, that's a harmless example. If that would be a code, if that would be an API key, or even worse, personal information. I mean, reputational damage, potential legal damage, and I mean, they will never trust you again if you do that. And there's a very famous example about a company that put in pictures of driving license and passports and stuff to verify people. They stored this on an unencrypted drive. They got all stolen. In those pictures are EXIF data. They say where you are. A lot of those people take those at home, so they know who you are, they have a driving license of you, they know your face, they know where you live, and basically then it's very easy to have a social profile or so from you. And there's a tool, it's called Deepfake Cam. Don't download it, you can try. It's very easy, 2 pictures, and it basically creates a filter over your face. And I tried that with one of the KYC providers in Switzerland. We made a test if that works, and basically we could fake with a passport and a passport picture and the deepfake cam on 2 pictures of this person, we could pass a KYC. That means those people can make bank accounts, get loans, whatever, phone cards. So it's your name, and this is not a password you can change. If your biometrics are stolen, you need to get a new passport. Let's say you're in here. Basically, that means you need to go to the embassy. You need to create a new passport. It takes forever. It costs a lot. Your visas may be tied to it. So be aware that that's a harmless example, but it can have a lot of, or can generate a lot of problem. So what is the other problem? When that does not look like a potential problem, because that's, if you create a prompt, basically this always does the same. But every time, every prompt, it changes those code, and it should not, because the invariant of the code is just to calculate the total sum of those prices. And if you go into depth a bit in the middle, because it uses the recursion pattern, this is a pattern in software engineering that uses, it would use a stack, and if the items array would be very big, it could run into a Stack Overflow exception and crash your whole system. There are other the problems that also could happen in the others, but just that you see that can be a subtle bug. It still does the same, it still looks good, but if you run that on your test system with 1,000 users, if you run it on something with 1 million users, then that can run very badly into problems. So when should we use, or when is vibe coding working well? Basically, if you're a one-person company, or if you have an idea, or you want to create a prototype, or also something small for you, with next to no collaboration, that works really well. Because basically, it's your tool, it's your personal assistant. You can tell the AI, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? And that works very well. If you do not care too much about the how something works, but focus rather on that it works, that's the second point. Again, depends on the context what your tool does. I mean, maybe I would not vibe code a banking application. Maybe the regulation people would also not tell you to do that. But, I mean, maybe in a year they can. If you're not too interested into commit history, I mean, those 170,000 plus and minuses, if you don't care about this because you're alone, okay. I mean, in a professional setup, that would mean you would have to test every module that the code was affected. That would basically result in a complete retest of your software. In the companies I work, usually they do not want to do that because it's very expensive. If you're regulated, it will be unpayably expensive. If your maintenance cycle are rather low, that means because if you have a big code base and it can change a lot, so I would make sure that your maintenance cycles are not daily. So everyone comes in, oh wait, I fixed this bug, and then you just tell the AI to fix the bug. That can result in a lot of changes. If you properly do that, you have to retest a lot, and in the end, that software becomes unmaintainable because it would take X people to just work on your code base and make sure nothing breaks. And I would also recommend that if your software is not life-threatening or revenue-threatening, that can work well. If it is, I would think twice and maybe rather go onto the spec-driven approach we look afterwards. It does not work well if you have a team of developers and they should collaborate on the same code base. Especially also if you have a review process on hand, which is not AI only, it would make sense that you do not vibe code too much. I mean, there's AI-assisted coding where you basically change small parts of your code, but if you purely vibe code and to say, look, I do not write the code myself, I let it basically be generated. If you're a team, that works out not well at all. We tried that with 3 people and we fucked it up within hours. The other thing is if your pull requests are reviewed by humans, usually you want to change as little as possible because the people want as much context. So if you have a small pull request, if you do, for instance, trunk-based development where you make small fast-lift branches, that is small pull requests and people can see what happened. If this big pull request with 170,000 lines added, no one ever will review that before their pension at least. And it does also not work well. I wrote an article about this on my LinkedIn profile. If your code base is poorly structured, because what happens is, we will see that later, all of those LLMs have a context window. It's like the attention span of the LLM itself. And the problem is, if your code base is so messy that it needs to load everything to understand everything, you run out of tokens, A. B, your context window is too big and it starts to forget things, and the quality of your output will severely go down. So make sure that even if you wipe code stuff, your software architecture and your design is good. So if it's not vibe coding, what can we then use? We can use something called spec-driven development. Yes?
Sorry, the question concerning the LLMs, isn't there a difference also in terms of the amount of tokens in terms of which LLM you use? Like Claude is better than Jet or Gemini? Those models have different token windows. At the moment, I think Gemini is around 1 million tokens. They said, if I remember correctly, the new Opus 4.6, which we will find out later if it still works, has also 1 million of tokens. The other ones have between 128,000 to 250,000. So, and that's not so much. I mean, that looks like much and sounds like much, but imagine you have a code base that you developed over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And I mean, that's the reality when you say we have a product and we want to shift our development method from traditional to an AI-assisted one. So it's not a green field. You start on a basis with a lot of lines of code. And if you have 100,000 lines of code, that's already 500,000, 600,000 tokens. And with everything plus you tell him to do, you have specifications what to do. So in the end, that runs out quite fast. And if we will see that later, if the context window fills up around 50, they say 10%, it starts to degenerate. If you use 10% of these 1 million tokens only, it starts to degenerate already. After 50, it becomes significantly worse, and after 80, it's unusable. So, in fact, there is a big number. In reality, if you go too hard on that, you will find out you have to do a lot of rework, which costs a lot of token, and luckily, you have to pay those companies by tokens. So, whoever thought this is maybe purely coincidental? Who knows? So how does that work with the spec-driven? Well, the spec-driven is basically nothing new. There are some smart people that, beginning of early 2000s, said this is a good idea. Mostly those people who did not like Agile. Because what they said is, we do waterfall, but we just call it now spec-driven. But what we basically do is we try to create specifications. What should our system do? And that's, in my opinion, and I had in the last weeks really cool exchanges with really nice people who basically invented Agile. And you try to write up what should my software do. We say we use this tech stack, we use this pattern, we create these parts of software, and you write very, very important, what should our software do? And that's something that is quite hard if you're a developer, because we as developers often think we want to know we want to write the cool software. In the end, the business says, no, we want to make money. And in the end, they're talking about the same thing, because the business needs technology to make money, but you need the business to pay your salary because they need to make money with your tool. So in the end, what we try to do is we try to find and describe what should our tool do to fulfill the business. And the technology, as we knew it from developer point of views, goes more and more back, because the code writing, the heavy lifting, is then done by the LLM. So the cool part is when we do spec-driven development in this approach, we write markdown documents. It's a very simple form of a text document with a bit of formatting. The cool thing is the LLM can read that very well and work with it. On the other hand, humans can too. So that means if you design or if it creates me a specification, which you will see later, we can see how that was written and we can verify that this is the way we want it to do. So it's not just, hey, go ahead and do stuff and then let the magic happen and see what happens, and then I always correct it. That's what vibe coding would be. We say we give it a more or less open specification or tell him an order. It does something, we take back the result, we talk to it back and forth until it does what we want in the way we want it. And what do we need for this? A working presenter, for instance. Oh, good. So for this we need structured input, because without structured input the stuff is not, I mean, LLMs are not unless code. If I give in 10 lines of code, I run it over a compiler, I get always the same result. If I do it with an LLM prompt, I do not. But I need to try to make it as repeatable as possible, because if I have a big developer team, I do not want every commit to change the whole code base. So I need to try to give guardrails in a way that we can use it, but it creates a reproducible quality and a reproducible output. The second thing is we try that in a structured approach. What we do is we create those, we split this development lifecycle into phases. We will see that in the next slide. And those phases are worked off in a sequential loop, and we try to review it with your brains. I mean, lazy people would maybe use an AI, but I would heavily recommend use your brains, at least in the beginning and in the middle before it starts to work, because that heavily has an impact on what your outcome will be. So if we look at this flow, this is from a tool called Spec-Kit from GitHub, but basically they all work plus minus the same. So what we do is in the first phase, what we do, we create our guardrails here on top. The guardrails are basically what tech stack are we using? Are you allowed to, or what database are we using? How do we use secrets? How do we do, is it a monolith? Is it a distributed architecture? So basically you give it like we describe our tool. On the other hand, the business describe what is the goal of our software. What do we want to do? Where do we want to go? So these are like usually if I do a software architect by Arc42 or TOGAF, that would be your business capabilities, which you write in, which has nothing to do with tech. Then we create a specification. Lazy people do that with AI. I recommend this is your product and you want your product to be shiny and better than others. So also, how can AI that is basically reproducing create something new? So make sure, I would always recommend write that by hand or let the AI help you, but you are the driver because you need to understand your product. These specifications are not tech specs. You just write, we will see, I want this and this and this and this in my feature. Then we say we plan the whole thing. When we plan the whole thing, we generate tech specs, and it creates basically what the software architect would look at and say, hey, how is it going? And in the end, we break that down into tasks. Tasks are like in a story, you say, hey, look, this and this and this and this is what I have to do to fulfill this. And in the last phase, we implement it, and that will be then the end of it. Of course, you review it at some point. There are other plugins. For time reasons, we will not go too deep into this. There are plugins, Anthropic released a super cool plugin called Ralph Wiggum, like is it South Park? South Park character? Simpsons, sorry, correct. From the Simpsons character, and this guy always asks questions, and so you can give it different personas and say, hey, the outcome, look at it under the persona of a UX designer or a tester or a user, and so it does reviews, it generates findings, and those findings you can then bring back into your plan. It adjusts the plan like you would do in an agile sprint. You basically ask your users, ask different stakeholders, they give you feedback, and the plan changes and it will be re-implemented up to a certain point. So this is super easy, no? I mean, you write some documentation, we don't have to code, very cool. The problem is, if we look at statistics, Number one reason of failed project is changing or poorly documented requirements. And what are we writing? The requirements. That can be a bit of a problem, and we will, like what I had to learn when I started doing it, this is really a challenge and you have to learn how to do it. So AI can help you and you can have a good basis, but to make a good output, you need to write it them, or at least you need to correct it themselves. And it requires, especially if you come from a techie view, really a different approach and mindset, because you need to think about how should my code, how should my program behave, instead of how do I implement this search algorithm or how do we access this database. You just say, hey, I want this information from your database, so the rest I let the tool work on. The second part we talked already is the context window limitation. Those models have a context window limitation. It's like the attention span. If you have kids or you have pets, you know what I'm talking about. So basically, after 2 treats, my dog forget everything, and it goes only in, oh, what did he say? But this one, what he should do before, forgot it. And that's the same. And if your context window gets too big, if you write or your code base is too messy, or your specification gets too long because you like to write a lot, at some point you can forget some important stuff. And then in this case, you would get maybe correct content, but poorly or not correctly formatted. So you would have to either iterate again or you would have to rework it manually. So make sure that you treat your context window as a resource. It's like performance in code. If you fail here, that can, I mean, because it's not deterministic, that can work once, but in the second part it can generate a mistake, and these are really hard to find, and it's not cool. So make sure that you understand the limitations of your context, and be aware LLMs and especially spec-driven development costs money, and it's not cheap. I had to upgrade my license to $100 because the max for my Claude, I need an X5. Otherwise, you run out of tokens in super no time. And if you use that really heavily, if you use that on a daily basis, 8 hours a day with a lot of code generations and changes, this will cost you a lot of money, several $100s a month. So it's not your $100 fix all my problems in the world solution. Summarizing the caveats, the creation of the specs is a challenge. It's time consuming. So basically, you write a lot of documents. So it's not like 2 minutes. I usually take around an hour or so to create one nice spec file. You don't get magically 10 times faster, or like me, maybe I'm just too stupid, but I maybe get 3, maybe 5 times faster as one normal developer. That is not what LinkedIn people would like to tell you. But on the other hand, if you're a small department, if you're a startup with 2 or 3 people and you get 3 times faster, you can do the work of 6 to 10 people, which is a lot already, I would say. So, or if you have an underfunded department within your organization, they only give you 2 or 3 people and you have a lot of workload, you're overworked all the time, so that can maybe help you to reduce the load a bit. Context is your enemy. The more you write, the cooler the LLM knows how to work. You give it more guardrails, it should work more accurately. On the other hand, the attention span is limited, so make sure that you stay within the context window of your model. Also evaluate your model and check how big this context window can be. If you run out, make sure that maybe you change the model, or you maybe also can create with a smart way. I used this in this airport project where we have a lot of information. So what we created is like an index of the documents, where to find which document. So with this we can reduce the context window so it does not run out and the output is still accurate. Because in airports, what we learned, they are really into accuracy, especially if it's regulated and so.
One question between I learned
to it. I mean, and JSON is basically a key value pair. That means I tell this is the first name and then I put the first name, this is the last name,
and this is, and I put the last name. That can be XML, that can be HTML, but the thing is, a JSON format, if it's complex, let's say you write a whole specification, I will show you some of how those specifications look, and they are big. I mean, if you write that in a JSON file, you run into problems like, oh, I have quotes, I have not correct encoding, and I think to format that in the end, it would take a lot of time. Whereas the markdown file, it adds some extra character, but I describe and it's human readable. That means I can give this, maybe I'm a startup and I have not one, or I have a colleague or a friend who is a senior developer and say, hey, look, this is the spec this tool generated. Could you look over it and see if it makes some mistake or if there are big flaws in that, and they can have a look over it, and within 1 or 2 hours, they can see, oh, yes, this is what it should do, and maybe correct that already, and the implementation will then follow the plan. We will hopefully see that. Yes?
Does the double quotes take from my balance credits in LLM? So if I include the double quotes, you said that in my JSON, does it count on my credits?
Yes. Everything you send, I mean, everything you send to the LLM is tokenized. Also, I mean, that's maybe I would not use XML or SOAP messages. I mean, you have a huge SOAP header which is useless in your way, and what you want is some message, and then you strip away the SOAP footer and everything. So that just costs a lot of money. But I mean, as a first approach, that works. But if you need to cost optimize it, then you try to reduce it to the max that is still useful. Are there any questions? I try now as next to create those demo. Let's see. I heard the internet is not the best, so let's find out. So basically, what we try to do, where are we? Yeah. We will try to send this over to the screen, or to this area. Ah, good. We try to make it in the console. It's a bit easier for you, and maybe also easier for me to find my Obsidian. Good. So, did someone see my mouse? Oh, here. Okay. So what we do is first we try to. This is done with SpecKit from with SpecKit from GitHub. This is something GitHub developed for spec-driven development. So it scaffolds everything, hopefully. So what we do is it downloads it from GitHub, creates, inits a demo, inits a new file, and inits a new folder, which is called demo std. And usually that is very fast, and we will see how fast it is today. And I think maybe not really fast. So what this thing does is it asks you a lot of questions. It helps you a lot already. So if you're new to this, we use Claude Code in this case. You see there's a lot of tools you can choose from. This is a Mac, so it will be a POSIX shell and not a PowerShell on Windows. And what it now does is basically, in a more fast manner, tries to set up this document. And if we what do we call it? STD, huh? Yeah. Something. That was my demo project to test.
Demo STD. I think it was. Yeah.
Yes. So we see that we see nothing. If we look at it in the Finder perspective, this mouse is really killing me. So maybe I can put it this side. No? Where is my mouse?
It's on the screen.
Shit, man. This is like really the brain teaser. I need to. This side, huh? Okay. So try to get back. Sorry for this. No, we have to go on this side. So you see my Finder at some point. Ah, shit, man. This is the horror. If it fails at this, then okay. So, but what it basically does is it creates this Git. It's a GitHub tool, so they create the GitHub repository for you. They have to specify, and this is it put in some templates, has some memory if you use this. There's the constitution. The constitution is basically what it said, the guardrails, how we will write it. It has the scripts in it. They are basically helper scripts which are needed for the Claude. And it creates also a .claude file, which, because we said we use Claude, and it uses these markdown files. These come out. These are basically the instructions for the tasks you will see later. What I will do is I have here some demo content. So the constitution I created, we can shortly have a look at it. And we have the mouse issue again. So this is a meeting cost calculation tool, what we want to do. As you can see, this is a markdown viewer. We have written what do we want, what is our tech stack. We have some architecture principles, functional requirements, a state machine, how should that story work, UX requirements, quality requirements, how do we want our file structure to look like, and some development and agents instruction. Hey, what should you do with your stuff? So, and now we go back to the terminal. No, we don't go back to the terminal yet. No, we have to go back to terminal first. And then, so what we do is we create here a spec file, and what I do is I already made some of those functions. We can have a look at this. I will put it in the spec. We can put in all of those. So, and these are the features. What I do is usually I create per one feature. I create a spec, like one markdown files. Let's see, now it's all in one, but it of course sets it to the other screen. Awesome. Do I see my mouse? Does anyone see my mouse?
There it was.
Yeah,
you have to move slower.
If you want to be very convenient, you have to arrange the.
Yes, most.
Open the template and arrange the.
Most probably that would be okay. I just need to find the mouse to navigate. No. Okay.
Put them opposite each other.
Yeah, we do that after. So basically what we are doing now is we try to get back to here. So what we need to do, let's see if we have the Claude.
Did you copy over the constitution as well?
I think so.
Okay.
As far as, did I?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen it, that's why. I don't want you to fail.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Kudos for that. So, okay, good. Let's copy this. You're right. It does not look like.
I mean, it probably would have worked out, but
and then we have
different way.
maybe. Well, it's like then I can blame it to the Claude model. So we are here back. Okay, terminal. So what we do, we start Claude code. This minus dangerously skip permissions we do for demo. Don't do that at home. You can do that, but don't tell me I told you to do it. So what this basically does is hopefully start it, correct? And what we now can do, you see you have the spec-kit commands which it use. We say spec-kit specify. Spec-kit specify the feature was it FR01 in specs folder. Let's see if it finds something. Yes, that looks good. And what it does, it tries to understand what we want it to do in this markdown file. This is a bit boring because it's super slow in this case. You will see it runs a lot of stuff and tries to figure out what to do. Once we have those, and as you can also see, I mean, this is not cheap. Cheap. It's quite a lot of tokens it takes for just creating and understanding what it has to do. And it's still not done. Usually it took me like 10 seconds or 20 to do so. But at the moment, it's a good slow internet. Lucky we have still 15 minutes, I think. And within this, we can implement one feature. So hold the deadline, guys. Awesome. It's cool. I mean, so many people stare at the screen and it just does that.
You're just counting seconds.
Yes.
Yay!
Correct.
10.
Yeah. Maybe I can ask a question between.
Yes, of course.
Take the time. Did you try OpenSpec, and do you know, can you explain if you did the difference between the two tools, or it's basically more or less the same, just a different flavor?
I did not try OpenSpec. What I tried is Cairo from AWS. This is basically just a fancy, it looks like Visual Studio Code, and it basically does it. I tried Spec-CLI first because I read a book. I met a guy that taught me about this, and we ended up drinking all night, and he showed me that, and we really implemented one feature of his production tool for his startup in one night together, and I was really hooked that this works and that it works really well because I was not into their team, their code base, but I still could, with the spec, create the feature correctly. On the other hand, they're all basically the same. They all have like you have a specification or a tool of your choice. You can download this, you can create a markdown file from this, and I mean, this is where Claude or other tools can help you. You say, look, this is my HTML, this is my format, whatever I have, and put it in. You can also, if you have diagrams in Plant2ML, Mermaid, whatever, it's maybe, I mean, binary files are always a problem, so Word is maybe not your best choice, or if you use some images or so, it still can do it. But I mean, if you have accessible code-based diagrams, put that in, because everything that helps is helping the model. The problem is at some point the context window, and you will see how well that works. But it's still ongoing. It's just slow as hell. I'm not sure if those 15 minutes time, but at least we can blame it to the internet.
How long would it take if the internet would be quite bad?
This morning it took me for this feature, when I tried it before the conference at home, I would say from the constitution and the file I put in, I did the same like now.
Slowly.
It's slowly doing, now big token wants to say it works. It took me like 15 minutes, around between 12 to 15 minutes to implement this one feature. It's not super fast, but the thing is, I mean, once you have your stuff, I mean, you can also reuse it. I mean, also the constitution, once you have that, or stuff it generates, I mean, if it generates artifacts for you, that's markdown files, you just can copy paste them, and if you have a similar project, you could reuse them. I mean, also the constitution file. I mean, the constitution file, a big part of your constitution is your company's architectural principles. They are cross-cutting concerns, and hopefully should be the same over all your projects. I mean, if they're not completely different, but I mean, if you say, look, we use this tech stack because all our people know it, we use that, we use this database, we have the policy that we write secure codes, that we do 80% test coverage, test first. Or these are the principles you would write in a constitution, and this one you can copy paste and then just add what is the specific thing my tool does. Is it done? Yes. Okay, we don't do a clarify. I mean, that would be very, very daring. So what we do is we try to plan. I show you afterwards how fast it is on this one. The next part of the plan, it generates now the technical specification for that. And based on this, and this is what you would review. I mean, you would then see, look, this is how our data model looks, API specs. For this, if you use, for instance, RU code or Olama, you can also all do that on a local model. I tried it on my Mac. This is a Mac, an M4 Max with 64 gigs of RAM. I can use a Qwen 3 coder or a Devstral 2 small locally on it via Olama, and that works really well. It's just slow. It is very slow. I mean, if you have a lot of time and you are not really on this deadline thing, you can also use it completely without internet. So I tried it without internet in the plane, and that worked really well. So if you have a constraint that you cannot send data out, you don't want to use Claude, or you also just want to make sure that you save on tokens, but you invest in the hardware or have it already, then you can use this fully local as well. That will take forever, ladies and gentlemen. But still, we have 8 minutes. We hope that maybe I can show you at least the plans.
Maybe another question from my
Yes.
side. Is there also like an easy way or plugin that you know of, so that you can take the specifications not only like in the Markdown file, so you have it in repo, but also like in Jira or like any other ticket system easily?
There is an MCP, because I gave a workshop for a client lately that they wanted to do it the other way, like they basically create Jira stuff and want to export it. That works. There is no official plugin to get it out, funnily. There is, on the other hand, there are MCP plugins that connect you, that you could create Jira tickets. So in the end, you could create your plan could use basically the Confluence, and in the end, what you always can do. I mean, this is Claude. If you know Claude, they have something that's called skills, so you can basically tell it how to do. Or most LLMs have something that is called tools, and in the end, what a tool does, it's a bit of good old written code with some meta information when to use this bit of code. And what you can do is you can write or can download or whatever, write it code. Good. You can download this, and then basically you could write code yourself and push it into the file itself. So let's shortly have a look at what this one did. If it did it correctly, we should have here a folder. Did it something here? Yes. That's the feature, and what it creates is here it creates some data model. It described the contracts. It did some research and the plan how to do that. I maybe shortly. This guy, really? Why always on my first screen? Okay, so now that's a constitution, because this tool is super awesome. It whatever you open, it does not open it. Next try. Oh, no? Huh? See? It just wants to make me get used to the mouse problems. So what it does is, this is one of the outputs you see here, or do not see it. It creates my approach. How do we use it? How do we do stuff? What are validations? And basically, you can give this to one of your techies, and they can review it. Does that work? On the other hand, you can also check with the requirements engineers. Hey, is that how you think this works? If you have a UX system or you have a design, I mean, you can also adhere to this. I mean, this is also Markdown files. You can check here and can change anything that you want. I mean, this is the document is how you would change. If you want stuff changed, don't change it in the code in this approach. Try to change it in your Markdown files. That's also something you would need to get used to it. It's a bit annoying. Oh yeah, I want smaller changes. You would create this plan, you would change it, and then you would basically create the tasks and implement it again. Let's see if we are really fast and we can do this before. Here, where are we? Correct. spec it tasks. Huh?
What it should do right now?
We have now the plan. What the tasks now does is basically it creates the implementation instruction for the LLM, how to implement. This is basically the approach, the high-level approach that you would, if you would see the research is, that's how I want to do it. I have this data model, and what you then would do is, this is what your lead developer or your architect would do. This is how the solution should look. And what we now try is you get actionable tasks, so you could implement the database, implement the database model, set up this, do this, do this. And that's what the tasks hopefully should do. I think if we overdraw some minutes, then maybe we can
deploy more than one agent to execute different tasks at the same time in Plot.
You could create sub-agents. You could create that, and then there is something, it's called a Claude MD, that's like describing it. So what you could do is you could say, I'm a specification expert for database, I'm a specification expert. That would be possible. Not out of the box, you would have to create that yourself. But I mean, this is all markdown files. You can download this, and then just also if you say the output is not what I want, you can at any time change that. I mean, these are markdown files which you can just edit. Just make sure if you download the latest version that when it overwrites those, that your changes are not lost, because that would give some uncool feedback then. The problem is this is then really hard. I mean, if the output changes drastically and you don't know why, it's because for us it's usually hard to think. Search the documentation. Is it?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Go for it. So in the meantime, I maybe can show you. Oh, this will be the awesome markdown fun again. So what we're doing here is basically it creates this tasks MD file, and if you look at this tasks MD file part, which I can show you if I can handle to go over here. Yes. Why ever that happens. My mouse. Yes, that's a thing. I don't know. I don't know what the person who really made that tool has a problem with.
You close the tasks and you keep the research.
But I double click it, and it shows here on my screen. So the only thing I would do is like, I want to move it over here. So, okay, good. Now we are here. So basically, these are the instructions from the side. It looks really hard to read, but basically it creates like a checkup list. In this first phase, we set up everything, and this is then what now the LLM will do and will try. If you want, I can also send you the whole markdown file and upload this to a GitHub repository where you can access it, and we add this to the slides. I guess the slides are shared afterwards. Is that correct? The slides after the talks, they will be shared. Yes. Okay, good. Then I will add it there, and then we can have.
Could you please add the link to GitHub of the tool?
Yes, it's already in the links. It's already in the link. So. What is already?
Do you have access to our folder yet?
Not yet. So, but
okay.
let it do, and then we shortly to show this. Okay, good. So, if we do that back again, we have at the last time just in the kind where it does that stuff. We can have a short look afterwards. As a summary, make sure that you use vibe coding when you're alone. If you have a bigger group, it makes sense to use spec-driven. Make sure that your context is meaningful, so add stuff, and don't forget that stuff you did before is not meaningless just because you use AI. Be aware, or especially make your managers aware. It will not make you a 10x developer, especially not in the beginning. It will make you 2-3 times faster. That will be significant. but you're not suddenly like the LinkedIn bros want to tell you 10, 100x faster. That's just bullshit, and everyone that tells you lies. It's like the people that say the blockchain makes you magically rich.
No.
Why are you still here? Make sure this is not cheap. So I would say you need at least $100 license for whatever tool you need. The ones with the $20, they will not be enough for this. If you really use it, as apparently you learned, with a $100 license, you can buy. If it's too complicated, it can be easily $200 or more on the extra spending.
I will mix and day it.
Yeah.
I will mix and day it for me.
At the very end, you said if it speeds you up 2 or 3 times,
it's still cheap.
And you invest all the money in the tokens, it's still cheaper than having new employees.
I mean, it depends on your salary, right?
That's and yes, on a common sense basis, I fully agree. Unfortunately, if you talk to management about this, it's all good until you ask for the $200 license. That's my learning of that stuff. And there are several tools. Then there are several tools out there. What I showed you is the spec kit today. I show you here shortly the links. There is spec kit. You can have the one from the sub-agent. There is the other ones. I add them here. The root code is the same. Then you have correct spec kit, and I will add the AWS here as well, the Cairo, if you need a fancy environment. So for this, if you want to talk to it, this link should give you a 30 minutes talk slide. If you otherwise, just send me an invite if you want to talk to the email. And if we're super lucky and still have a minute, let's try. Is it done? No, of course not. Phase 2. So I think last time I was 242 or so. So it could still. This one? Yeah.
Do you see more the future of vibe coding with LLMs or with SLMs? Or spec-driven?
I think spec-driven is a good approach if you're in an enterprise. I think if you have a history, if you have a team, if you have several people, then I think spec-driven is the way that at the moment. I mean, you can also do parts of this with vibe coding. You just basically create a lot of context. Yes.
About where you prefer to use, or if you see the future going forward with LLMs or SLMs in this spec-driven environment. Like you're using on your computer Quen, right? But
yes.
You have the maxed out Mac, right?
Correct.
Everybody has that. How would you think about the approach of maybe like training smaller SLMs that would run on a MacBook Air, for instance, on like all those different steps, and them able to run at much lower cost, maybe much lower?
I would say if your problem is very specific, let's say you are really specialized on migrating COBOL old school mainframe applications to Java, which is I mean, there is a finite approach how people do that. And so then this could be an idea. In general, I would say do not try, if you have to train your model, something is already fishy, because training the model for this, you can buy a lot of MacBooks. So just, you need to train the model and you need to spend a lot of token. And if this is a thing, what you can do is you could use an AWS Bedrock. You could have a foundation library with Azure. That's also on a legal basis. Depending, that's what I was told by some banking lawyers when I spoke at a conference in Switzerland. And these banking lawyers said, whatever you use, if it's OpenAI, if it's Anthropic, whatever, the direct link is never 100% legally compliant, especially if you use in a regulated environment as insurance or so. They say the only way that it is compliant is if you use an agreement with a cloud provider. If you go via Azure, you have your enterprise agreement, and this is basically bulletproof. That's what they can check, and by this, you then can consume the models via them. So that's what they say. So that's what I would do. I would rather say if you have a problem with this, these Mac like these Mac M3s, they already, I mean, mine does not use all my GPUs. The problem here is mostly the RAM, because it's too big for the RAM. But if you get like an M3 with, I think 512 megs of RAM and Ultra, it's like 2,000 to 5,000. I would say you can run 5 to 6 people at least quite intensively on that, and the investment is some thousand. I mean, AI is not cheap. We need to agree, and I mean we need to accept that. I mean, you cannot have it, you give away stuff to a genie, and you need to pay this genie, and it's either in your local CPU power or by tokens. But if you legally need to comply and to go for a local model or use a cloud provider for this. The SML, if you have a specialized feature set that always repeats itself, then that could be a way. But the problem with software engineering, usually you buy those, I mean, you hire people to do creative work. It's create something new on the market or create something better on the market that other people already implemented, but it's usually very creative work. So I think the LLM needs a lot of the model needs a lot of freedom. I'm not sure if an SML would do it. You can try. I always say, look, I would start with the biggest model, and then what you can do with it. If it works, try. You still can cut it down at some point. If you see that does not work out, or it's slow, or it does not generate what I want, we have a lot of rework, then just go back to the model up there. I mean, if you self-host it, that's just you save some CPUs, and in the end you maybe can put on one machine 20 people instead of 10 or 15. But if the output degrades, then make just the total cost of ownership calculation for this.
But I mean, isn't there a trade-off as well? Like you said, the LLMs, right, they're not very consistent in their output. Even with structured file, MD files, and etc., you still can end up with like slightly different result on 2 different runs. Will a trade SLM likely less, maybe, or what do you think?
Yeah, but you would have to retrain it. Or I mean, once you set, I mean, what you would have to do is you say, I train my LLM or my SLM, and then basically I fix this. I have to retrain it not to touch the code that works. And I mean, at some point, refactoring would still mean, I mean, at some point, if you do TDD or I mean, this does not prevent you from learning things. Maybe you learn in a month that what you did is working out for 1 million, but now suddenly you got a spark and you have like 10 million of users and you need to rewrite the whole thing. So I'm not sure. I mean, you can try it, but I would say I would think that this is not work.
Right? I mean, that's also a problem we have with LLMs. I mean,
correct.
I prompt it with a super structured markdown. Next week, very different results. My SLM is much faster and much cheaper to train at the end of the day than an LLM that needs to retrain itself eventually anyway.
I'm not sure if the training is cheaper if you train it very specifically on your code base, honestly. I mean, I never tried it, but I would definitely give it a try. The problem is if you have if you're a consulting agency, you have a lot of inputs. That is maybe, you would need to have a lot of specialized models, but I mean, worth a try. That maybe would work. Cool. Are there any other questions? So, results. Okay. Let's see. Before we stop, is it done? No, of course not. Polish, man. Polish. See, as a good developer, it says, "Hey, I need to make everything nice." Yes. So you have any other questions? No? Yes? Maybe?
Well, in the middle of the presentation, when you showed the chart, my projects failed. What was the source of that?
The source, it's from Statista. What they did is basically they analyzed, I can give you the source for this. What it basically does, they analyzed, or they asked people, hey, you have failed projects. What was the main reason your project failed? And that was mostly that it's the easiest way out. Otherwise, I have to, if you see unclear or changing requirements, it's usually quite easy because you say, oh, I'm not to blame. I mean, it was not my problem. It was the person's requirements or the product owner's problem. And I maybe as a consultant would do the same, because then you can create change requests, which bring you more money.
Next to done. Next to done. No.
Next to done.
Yeah. But I think also noodling is one of the nicest words I learned by using this at all. So I never heard about that before, and
there is this XKCD comic, so where the people are fighting. What are you doing? Compiling, and now it's like noodling. But still, what is it still doing?
noodling.
But did it not say polish? I mean,
yeah, but everything looks correct. So this is, but it's still doing something, even if everything looks correct.
It just. Yes. Run the app.
Yes.
Is it buy? No, it's it exit.
And then,
It says buy.
yeah,
Yes.
then it says buy.
So, should we try it?
Yes.
Of course. Hey, look, it worked. No shit. I show you as soon as I find my mouse. So this is like the. And you got the most expensive part of things. So you have a thing. Well, I tried. Let's try. I mean, let's be an asshole here, and hope that it did it when I. I mean, that's what I would usually try. You try the product manager and say.
Try to be an asshole.
John Doe. And if we're lucky, it says, well, you must be great to zero. At least it takes this basic validation which you put in. And let's see if it works, if we are expensive or semi-expensive. Yes, it does. And we can remove the person again, so also that works. So, and that would you do for every feature, one by one by one by one. And honestly, what I learned when we tried it, and we tried it on a production system, it did not change the whole code base all the time. It really, maybe this was just a smart, I did not have so much insights in the Claude MD file and what it was, but basically it was saying you should not touch it. And also if you do a clean separation with domain-driven approaches like bounded context, you use API specs, if you have microservice approaches, then it really adheres to that and it does not change code it should not touch. Okay, are there any other questions? If not, sorry for being over time. I hope you had some fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.